Hello, and welcome to Marketing Global Edition with me, Jasmine Montgomery. And today I am joined by a very dear and wonderful friend, Andrew Fishwick, who is Executive Chair for SALT, which is a leading marketing consultancy specializing in food and drink that Andrew also founded. And Andrew is fascinating on the subject of food and how it helps to tell brand stories. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on today. It's really lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting.
Oh, brilliant. It's going to be fun. This is going to be a fun one. So, sorry, no disrespect to Piers, my usual partner in podcasts, but this one's going to be fun.
I'll be replacement Piers for a week. That's all right.
Absolutely. You can come and work here. In fact, we've got loads to do. I'll give you a list of jobs. For our listeners who don't know you, I'm sure many will have heard of you, but for those who don't, what is SALT and what is brand storytelling through food, which I gather is what you do. Wonderful, title. What does that really mean in practice? Tell us all about SALT.
Yes, so SALT is a marketing consultancy specialising in food and drink, as you rightfully said, and it was formed nearly 8 years ago now. And it was formed by me with an idea on the back of an envelope, as all my good ideas are. To give you a bit of context, it was formed because I said I was never, ever, ever going to run restaurant businesses ever again, and if I ever did, you were allowed to punch me in the face. Because I was fed up of running restaurant groups, which is what I was doing prior to that. But during that time, I'd spotted a sort of an anomaly, I always describe SALT as originating as a translation company because it was translating between brands and food and drink operators, restaurant groups, chefs and all of that stuff because they couldn't speak each other's languages. And I think this is true in exactly what you do, Jasmine. It's exactly the same. We're translation vehicles, aren't we?
That's right. We translate things into visuals, into design, you translate it into food and drink.
Exactly, yes. Because quite often brands don't speak the language of operators and they don't speak the language of designers, and they need people like you and me in the middle to be the Google Translate before that existed between those two outcomes. So SALT was invented because I believed that they couldn't communicate well with each other. And what used to happen is brands would hire a chef or a restaurant or a food consultant or a strategist, and the chef or the food consultant or the strategist would do some work for the brand and they'd both leave cross. And I thought, well, this is the worst of all outcomes because, the definition of a good negotiation or a good piece of work is you both leave happy. And I thought neither was leaving particularly happy out of this relationship because they didn't have that middle ground in order to translate their vision and their strategy and their understanding of the process. So SALT was invented to do exactly that. And that's what we've been doing to some extent, to greater or lesser extent, for the last 8 years.
So how do you tell a brand story with food? So can you give me an example of a project? Like, bring this to life for us. What does it mean to I know what it means to bring it to life through design, but you bring it to life through caviar and vodka, much more fun stuff than, Pantones. What does it mean? How do you do it? Who do you do it for?
So, and again, this was kind of one of the originating founding ideas of this. Food and drink is such a sort of intimate thing. My friend says to feed someone is the most erotic thing you can do, and I slightly agree with him. It's such an intimate thing. It's universal. We all eat and drink to some extent, not always necessarily caviar and fine wine, but we all eat and drink. So we all of us in humanity have an understanding of what that means, and therefore it gives you a wonderfully sort of accepting canvas upon which to paint your brand stories because everyone understands it in some way. So what we do is I always describe SALT as a bit of a weed because if you let us in, we start to entangle into your brand. We quite often get. I'll give you a very good example. About 7 years ago, CNBC, the business news channel, part of now NBC Universal, hired us to do an event in China. At an event they were doing called East Tech West, where they were getting loads of the Silicon Valley boys and girls over to Guangzhou in China to do a sort of 4-day. They were going to host the CNBC news desk out of there for 4 days, and they wanted a sort of East meets West menu. So they wanted the Chinese chefs that we work with in China, and they wanted us to bring over some Western chefs. So quite simply, it started as a big dinner, a big banquet at the end of this do. For 7 years now, we've worked with CNBC on their global strategy, working across their sales department, marketing department, of how we interact across their brands, not only their own brand of CNBC, but their advertising partners and marketing partners. which has led to us creating the world's highest Michelin-starred restaurant halfway up a mountain in Davos for the World Economic Forum every year, which is amazing. Where all of the food and drink is sourced within I think it's a 12-mile radius. The trout comes from the stream at the bottom of the mountain, the cheese and the wine from down in Davos village. So, stuff like that we do, which is an expression of around that one, it's about sustainability, but it could be around anything.
It is my dream to one day go to Davos and be interviewed by Richard Quest on CNN in the snow at Davos. But how do you bring a brand like CNBC to life?
How do you do it? It's a good question, and we do it. I'll tell you, they're a great example of one of our most cherished clients, because we do a lot for them and across a lot of different kind of platforms. So for Davos, it was all about sustainability.
Right.
It was all about hosting a suite where we could. It's a wonderfully intimate thing we do there. We do 20-odd people for a lunch and a dinner every day for the 4 or 5 days of Davos, and it can be world leaders, it can be brand leaders, technology leaders, it can be anyone that CNBC invites to these very exclusive dinner parties. I hosted one year, and it was just amazing. We had will.i.am, we had Al Gore, we had the head of HP technology, and we had all these wonderful people around. Giving talks and giving. It wasn't really talks, it was more informal than that. It's just like the most amazing dinner party.
Wow.
So for that one, it was all about finding the essence, the kind of brand essence of what the CNBC in the mountains for Davos was. And we came up with sustainability as the leading theme for that year's Davos. Now, when we do CNBC at Cannes Lion, we do great big gorgeous roof parties with Paris Hilton DJing and Jimmy Kimmel last year, and it's an absolute riot of a party. Much more rosé. Yes, exactly.
It'll be a bit more expensive. So, are you? So obviously you're very much kind of resonating with the event, where it is, who's coming. Mm-hmm. How much are you bringing the brand itself to life through food? How much are you interpreting the brand? I think obviously with CNBC, it's very much a kind of, sort of cognoscenti vibe. I know you've worked with people like Pinterest. I saw some of the stuff online that you've done for Pinterest.
Yeah, we did a bit of Pinterest in Cannes as well, actually.
Yeah, I was really interested in the way that actually the Pinterest, the Pinterest brand was really coming through in food. How do you do that? And tell me more about it.
Some of them are obviously much more abstract. You're absolutely right. How do you... So a great example is we worked on the NBA, the National Basketball Association, and Hennessy. Now, Hennessy, obviously... This is a collab.
And we're going to be talking about collabs next week in our podcast.
Very good.
Thank you for warming us up to next week's topic. First of all, can I just say, what a bonkers collab.
Yeah, it was kind of brilliant. Right. So and then when you're dealing, again, I'm sure you'll talk about this in much more detail next week, but then you're dealing with two brands who you have to please.
Yeah. And such different brands. Hennessy
and such different brands. Yeah. Right. So we did a whole sort of gifting mechanism around getting the leading bartenders in Europe and EMEA to sample the Hennessy special edition. We did some gifting around the NBA merch, and actually the campaign ended with floating a basketball court down the Thames, where they played basketball on the Thames with an NBA Hennessy mock-up thing that was just absolutely mad.
Was this after you'd consumed most of the Hennessy?
I think that idea may have come after. Yeah, a lot of our ideas do. So how much are you, having to understand about the brand? How do you go about, what's the process by which you go about, translating a brand into food? Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a total immersion process in that way. So lovely 𝐓𝐢𝐻𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐷 Collins, who's our sort of creative genius, we often talk about Elliot disappearing down rabbit holes for days on end, because he does. He finds the essence. He researches the history of a brand. He reads the brand Bible endlessly. Okay. We tend to work quite closely with either in-house marketing teams or out-house agencies. To understand, first of all, what is the brand? What are they trying to achieve? And then we reverse engineer what we might do with that. And it's not always what they think they're going to come to us with. And that's where it becomes really interesting. is when they think they want to throw. Most people think they want to throw a great big launch party or a big launch dinner or something, and that's not always what they actually want. What they actually want is to communicate with their clients or their future clients, and actually that's not always necessarily the best way. So sometimes we tell them they're wrong, and we're quite good at that.
How does food help you communicate with your clients?
Because I think it goes back to that intimacy. It goes back to that kind of very, very intimate way of putting something in your gob. If you're putting something in your gob as a brand experience, it's quite a sort of visceral thing. Taste, smell, these are very evocative senses. And, you know, as brand guardians, we want that physical link with our customers and our partners. And I think food and drink is such a wonderful, wonderfully evocative way of doing that.
Do you think that food in some ways kind of makes intangible values tangible? Can you kind of bring to life brand attributes like, I don't know, you talked about sustainability already with CNBC, Davos, but community, luxury, I don't know, trust, things like that. Like, how do you translate something abstract like innovation into a dish?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we did a piece of work, really interesting piece of work a few years ago. It's pre-pandemic, so it's probably 6-7 years ago now, with the V&A around an exhibition they did called Food Bigger Than the Plate. And it was really it was the V&A's idea, and it was looking at what the future of food and the future of farming and the farming circles and all of that. So it had sort of 4 or 5 tenets to the exhibition. But one of my most favourite bits, and it goes back to your sort of trust, engendering trust in a brand, people could complete a sort of questionnaire on an iPad, and AI would generate the most perfect snack for them at the end of the exhibition. And this machine then delivered this snack, and they didn't know what was in it, and they sort of had to trust that this flavour that we'd created in these, I can't remember how many different combinations there were of this snack, hundreds I think by the end, was going to be delicious. And that, I think, you're then asking people to take a leap of faith, and therefore that link of trust into that leap of faith becomes a really interesting sort of
right. I mean, what if they said, you know, sardines, raspberries and vanilla?
Well, no, they didn't get a choice, so they had to answer questions about their personality and what they thought of the exhibition, and with those answers, a bit of AI generated the perfect snack for them.
In real time, it sort of mixed.
In real time, yes, it was sort of a clever.
Good, or did
no,
some people...
no, absolutely not. It was a mixed bag, but it was a talking point at the end of the exhibition that everyone got. Because if you were going around, we thought if you were going around a food exhibition, you needed to eat something. You couldn't just go to a cafe and have a ham and cheese sandwich at the end.
Can you think of an example where a tasting experience in some way sort of has changed perceptions of how people feel about a brand, or where that was your brief?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
Shift.
Actually, one Rob did. It was on the cusp of him joining Salt, so it wasn't a pure Salt project, but was absolutely brilliant. Airbus were the client, and he created Airbus private jets. So if you work out how many people in the world can afford one of these things, it's like 12 people or something anyway. And they were seen as quite sort of stuffy, and they did actually it was another collab with Barclays Bank of all people in Monaco. Who are the people who can fund your private jet when you obviously I know Seven Brands has a choice of private jets to pick at any given day, but and they didn't need financing, I'm sure they were just paid with cash. So Rob created this dinner. Actually, funny enough, it was in the car park at Barclays in Monaco, but they dressed it as a private jet fuselage, and we had Alan Ducasse do the dinner. And there were edible clouds. So there were clouds made of sort of edible candy floss type things floating around. The menus were paper aeroplanes. We had Stelios was throwing paper aeroplanes at the head of Barclays, who was throwing, and it just became this absolute carnival of joy. And we always quote it as one of the best sort of ROIs of any event ever, because I think 3 private jets were sold through Barclays from that event. So whatever that event cost, it did cost quite a lot. The ROI for both sides was extraordinary, thousands of percent.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. You must have been riding off that one for ages. And whenever anybody asks you about ROI, which of course I'm about to do, you know, how you measure the effectiveness. I mean, certainly you could measure it in number of Learjets sold. Yeah. But as we all know, you know, marketing rarely gets that kind of direct response. So I mean, you know, it's difficult for all of us. We get asked to measure, you know, changes in colour, and goodness knows, you know, you change your brand colour, who knows what the ROI is. But how do you go about measuring it if it's not eyeballs and bums on seats?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Again, because we don't work in that sort of eyeballs arena, really, it's much more sentiment tracking. So if we are doing data analysis, it's much more around sentiment tracking around a brand. And even within sentiment tracking, we tend to compartmentalize that, and we tend to categorize that within the exact target audience we're looking for. And there are wider ones. So we do the big food festival at Soho Farmhouse every year, which is just great fun.
Amazing.
And again, it's sort of a funny one because it's only obviously accessible to Soho House members. But actually, what it does do, we track the sort of sentiment around member enjoyment, member engagement. People, get surveyed and they'd say, we'd like to come to this if you did it again next year. But more than that, what it does do is it increases people's awareness that Soho House is a culinary destination. And I think that for us, not only within their membership cohort, but also within the wider hospitality industry, they're seen as. And that has led them to do more series of guest chefs around their houses around the world that all started with that. So, that's been a really interesting, and again, a sort of growth area.
And how much, so, I mean, you sort of go onto Instagram and you can see beautiful photos and videos and reels of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
How important has social media become in terms of, are you chasing, when you're setting up an event like this, are you kind of thinking about the thumb-stopping moment, the Instagrammable moment, what's going to make for great content, what people are going to want to engage with, what people are going to want to sort of show off on their socials?
A great example of that is a year or two ago, we did an event for 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐻, who are the frying pan, cooking pan people. And they're a brilliant, innovative American company, and we look after some of their stuff in the UK. And the idea was they had these host of brand ambassadors who we were going to put together a dinner party again. And this was a dinner party for 4 influencers. So I think we did about 24 people. In a beautiful, beautiful apartment down in Waterloo. And it was cooked for by Claire Smith, 3 Michelin star, called by Claire Smith, because she's one of the brand ambassadors. And she had, as her sous chef, she had Paul Ainsworth, who's himself a 2 Michelin starred chef.
Who was doing dishes, a 1 Michelin star chef.
Exactly. Well, then hilariously, because Gordon Ramsay's involved, he stopped by during the dinner party to cook a course, and as did Nancy Silverton, Michelin starred chef from the US, from LA. So we had this sort of the world's most extraordinary dinner party. And again, you're absolutely right. That was about people filming not only their beautiful food they were having throughout the evening, and we did it on an open plan kitchen, but the idea that these guys were just sort of dropping around and cooking a course on their way through.
Is it terribly stressful? I mean, these things, do these things go wrong? I mean, are you losing, are you just freaking out on the day, and have things gone wrong? And has anything ever been a complete disaster?
So I'll tell you one story. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I'll ask forgiveness from Rob rather than ask
Nobody's
permission.
listening but me. Don't worry about it.
We did. I wasn't there, unfortunately, for this one, but Elliot went out and led this one. We did the night after the Oscars in LA. We took over, I think is it Jerry Bruckheimer? Is he the movie producer? I think it was his house in the hills in LA. And our client it's 2 clients again, actually. We'd Mr. Porter, the fashion brand, men's fashion online portal, and 𝐻𝐻𝐽𝐻, which is a very fancy men's designer brand. I'd never heard of them because the suits start at sort of 12 grand or something. And this is a bit of Elliot genius, actually. The idea was, how can we bring to life this brand that was all about very fine tailoring, very expensive, beautiful cloths. And we decided that pasta was the, because if you're an Italian chef learning pasta, you have to learn Elliot will tell me how many there are, 128 official shapes of pasta. You have to learn exactly how to cut the pasta, and it's a bit like tailoring.
Right.
So we did this dinner party by the pool, and we had all these influencers and people the night after the Oscars. So fabulous crowd. We had an amazing LA-based Italian chef do the cooking, but simultaneously we had some of the tailors from 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 cutting the cloth and building these kind of... So it was mirroring the cutting of the pasta, the making of the pasta into these things.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? It turns out the chef had put the very hot pan down on Jerry Bruckheimer's entirely single piece of wood kitchen unit and left a rather large mark.
Oh, no!
And we got a bill the next day that would have sunk salt about 50 times over. We came to an arrangement, I believe, in the end. But when you're dealing with food, I can't. Yeah. And another one that didn't go wrong but could have gone wrong. We did a load of work at Goldman Sachs in the city of London, or down in Holborn, and we brought chefs in. They were doing some cooking, and we'd read the agreement that said if we set off the fire alarm and we have to evacuate Goldman Sachs, we'd be responsible for any lost profit for Goldman Sachs UK and Europe for the time that the fire alarm was on.
Why did you sign that contract?
Well, we didn't. We took that bit out, but luckily we spotted it before we signed it, because again, I don't think that salt could have quite covered the losses for Goldman Sachs Global.
So you haven't burnt down Goldman Sachs, but
we didn't burn down Goldman Sachs. We did make a mark on, I think, Jerry Bruckheimer's kitchen top. Yeah,
right. You've made a mark on a big Hollywood producer, maybe just not.
Yeah. I don't think we've been invited back.
Bless you for sharing those. That's really funny. And on the plus side, then, what have been the projects where you've kind of been really amazed by a brand's or company's willingness to kind of let you do something bonkers and creative?
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. I mean, I think generally CNBC and NBC Universal have been very, very open to us coming up with bonkers ideas. We're doing... Which is
kind of surprising. I mean, I don't think CNBC and think Maverick, Iconoclast.
No,
wow.
Exactly. And actually the teams that we work with are incredibly creative, incredibly open to sort of very cool partnerships. And in fact, Elliot's about to go out and do COP in Brazil for them. Wow. And he's working up the ideas of what we're going to do out there. So that's going to be fun. And again, they're giving us a relatively sort of free rein to come up with some of these wonderful ideas for them. I
was doing some research into salt, and I was on your Instagram account, and you have some fantastic content. It's really impressive the way you kind of tell stories. You live your own brand by telling stories. But I was interested in a caption with one of your posts that said, "Do typefaces influence how you taste food?" And I saw this question. I just want to know the answer. Do typefaces influence how you taste food?
Yes. It's a short answer. We've done a lot of work. This is really, really interesting, actually. Yeah. I did some events years ago called Eating Sound, right? Wow. And these were in a dining room, and we had generally invited public guests. And the idea was we worked with a composer and a chamber orchestra to compose unique pieces of music for each course that was being served. And we studied how it affects their perception of taste. And the most interesting one was always the chocolate pudding at the very end. We did two pieces of contrasting music the composer came up with. One was very deep and low and lots of bass, and so we did two halves of this. They were exactly the same pudding, exactly the same chocolate pudding, in two beautiful squares. People ate the first one and with that bit of music, and they thought it was quite bitter and dark chocolatey and heavy. And then the second piece we did with lots of light twiddly flute music and nice violins, and everyone thought it was much, much sweeter. And they were exactly the same dessert. And our typeface does exactly the same.
You mentioned much earlier on that you work with the brand Bible, right? The brand guidelines. Now, we spend most of our lives writing brand guidelines for clients. Yes. But we've never ever, I've got to say, like we've done, sonic branding for clients where we've described what their brand, if it were a sound, should be like. Yep. And of course, everything visual that you can imagine. I have yet, and I realise how remiss this is of me, but I have never yet done a piece on what the brand should taste like. Do you think are we missing a trick here?
Absolutely missing a trick. Can you imagine starting a presentation with feeding the people you're pitching to and saying, this is what your brand tastes like? We've worked on it.
And such a good idea. It's
just brilliant. Yeah. No, and again, I think it shows that kind of intimacy with the brand knowledge. It shows that real understanding. If you're willing to put it on a plate in front of someone and say, "This, if your brand were a cake, this would be your brand. If your brand were a dish, this would be your. This is what we think your brand is." It's kind of. I mean,
there are some brands that it feels like that would be really easy to do with. I mean, obviously things. I mean, something like Apple's is sort of really obvious, but I mean, even something like, I don't know, if I was asked like, what does Goldman Sachs taste like?
The vampire squid, probably. Yeah.
Well, you need to be nice about them because you might work.
Yes. Oh, yes.
CNBC. I mean, it's such an incredibly interesting thing to take a brand that does not instantly have a connection to taste, and then to interpret it in that way. And I mean, I guess if we were writing guidelines around food, how would we approach that for a client?
Yeah.
I guess we'd have to talk to somebody like yourself. We couldn't just make shit up, right?
Always. I mean, just employ salt. That's the answer to everyone's problem. No, I think it's really interesting because I think, you said about colour and font, and these are kind of well-trodden paths, but food and drink just give you another, not necessarily more important or lesser, they just give you another canvas upon which to paint that story. And I think you can do it with anything, and not only can you do it with this kind of core brand. So for example, if we're saying CNBC, fine, okay, you might be able to work on CNBC, but actually, what does CNBC and Davos and sustainability look like? Then you can quite quickly narrow it down into something a bit more tangible and a bit more visceral in that way, because you're marrying not only the brand but with their objective and who they want to talk to and who they want to tell this story to. I
mean, it's really fun because if I think about airlines for a minute, I can imagine what British Airways would taste like versus Virgin.
Yes,
versus
see?
EasyJet.
Yeah, and Emirates would be entirely different again, wouldn't it?
Emirates would be delicious. Now, of course, it's easy because they serve food, so there's an element of there's already food embedded in that experience. I mean, I guess if I think about cars, would I know what a Lamborghini would taste like versus a Mini? A Mini would be what, like bangers and mash or a sausage roll or something.
Yeah, maybe, but actually slightly more fun and a bit more cheeky than that, I think, of Mini.
Yeah.
I don't know quite what it would be, but it would be a sort of, Yeah, I mean, maybe something bangers and mashy, but with a twist.
Or kedgeree or something.
Kedgeree, yes, maybe. A sort of British export into...
if you could design a brand meal, brand experience for any brand in the world, who would you absolutely love to bring to life through Flavour?
We've got a couple at the moment we'd love to do, which we haven't done, so these are just aspirational ideas. Rob and I have always said we'd love to do some work with Lego.
Yes, we just did a podcast on Lego a couple weeks ago.
Did you? I missed that one. I will go back and listen to that one.
What would Lego taste like?
What would Lego taste like? I don't know, but I love their kind of... I love their... Yeah, I mean, it would be very colourful, obviously. Pick and mix, it would be very, very colourful. It would be very playful. It would have that interaction that we really like doing with food, whereby it's not just, placed in front of you and that's what you get. It would involve building your meal somehow. I don't necessarily mean physically, but it would, that kind of idea. But also, I think what Lego is such an amazing brand is that they've gone sort of full vertical integration with studios and, movies and interaction. But there would be some learning in there as well, because Lego is all about learning. It's all about that kind of didactic. So there'd be some element of learning, I think. So if we could work up something for them, and then Rob talks about one that we pitched to Doc Martens, the boots. So Doc Martens were launching a range of chef shoes. So they reached out to us, and we were going to do this amazing project, and we were deciding who. Obviously, the target audience for it was chefs, but we wanted to do something much wider into the Doc Marten universe. And we came up with the idea that at festivals and rock gigs, there's the VIP area and the artists and all the rest of it behind the stage, but no one ever looks after the roadies. No one ever looks after the guys and girls who rig the kits, who all wear Doc Martens, obviously.
Oh, that's
so we were going to do this world tour of bringing amazing chefs who are only there to feed the roadies, not the stars. Sponsored by Doc Martens. And then just as we were about to get it signed off, Doc Martens got sold to private equity and they cancelled spending any money or having any fun, which was a real shame. So Rob was saying the other day, we'd love to re-pitch that idea because we think that was a super idea.
It's such a super idea. I love that. It's about the people who make the brand happen, not just the
exactly. Yes. Not just the Taylor Swifts of this world, but the guys and girls who are rigging those enormous arena tours night after night.
What a brilliant idea! Oh my gosh, I'd love to see you do a Taylor Swift evening. Maybe you could do the wedding. You should do the wedding.
Oh, we should do the wedding. If she's listening, yes, we're available.
Totally, yeah. I'm sure you would make yourself available. My final question is, if you were a dish, of course, everybody who's listening, he is a dish, but sorry, he is a dish. If you were a dish in the other sense of the word, what dish would you be?
I think I would be family-style Sunday roast. A big leg of lamb, lots of rosemary, garlic, some great roast potatoes, some lovely big carrots, but family style, not plated. You know, everyone just diving in and picking bits, and everyone having a sleep afterwards.
It sounds great. I will be there on Sunday. I'll bring a bottle. It sounds gorgeous. It sounds gorgeous. You have been gorgeous. You've been delicious, wonderful, enlightening, enchanting, tantalizing, all the things that good flavors should be. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about salt. Absolutely fascinating.
You are most kind. Thank you so much for having me.
Marketing Global Edition is sponsored by Adsy, the ad generator for small businesses that serves you effective and affordable ads in seconds. And by 7 Brands, the international advertising and branding agency that has worked with clients around the world from Coca-Cola to Facebook.